Hello, hello. Welcome. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for the next edition of Leading in a Crisis, Actionable Business and HR Strategies for Navigating Crisis and Change. And today I'm thrilled to have Amy Lafko with us. Hello, Amy.
Hi, Anissa.
And her topic today is leading with a people-first strategy in challenging times. So we've got a lot to cover. I'm going to jump on in and say thank you to our sponsors, and then Amy's going to tell us what we're going to learn today. So first, I want to say thank you to David Whitmarsh and his team of super talented multi-channel marketing communication experts at the Whitmarsh Consulting Group. Without David and his team, our summit would not be possible. So thank you so much, David. I also want to say thank you to Insperity, HR that makes a difference. Insperity volunteered very quickly when I knocked on their door and said, I'm thinking about doing this summit. What do you think? And they said, sure, how can we help? So I also asked, well, would you mind giving something away for free? And they put together this free HR financial analysis report and debrief, which is actually pretty cool. It is an HR budget analysis, confidential report, and one-on-one debrief. And as we all know, HR, as well as our business, kind of turned upside down right now. So if you had a budget going into 2020, for most of us, it's not the same. And so this is really something for HR leaders who are looking at how do we restructure, re-strategize, and do it quickly, efficiently, and most effectively. So if that would be supportive, don't hesitate to reach out to them. You can learn more at turnkeycoachingsolutions.net/HR report. And final sponsor I want to introduce you to is our internal team of strategists. Amy, of course, is also one of our strategists now. Super excited about that. So our strategic planning process is a data-driven process. It's based on research, massive amount of research, and the long and the short of it is that our team took our typical strategy planning process, revamped it specifically for this crisis and this strategy, and out of that, organizations that are looking at revamping their business, innovating new product lines, shifting their workforce, etc., are going to have to not just dust off that old strategic plan, but in some cases, revamp it entirely. So if our process would be of service to you, we would be honored. And even if it's not, I'd be happy to share our experience and expertise and guidance complimentary. Don't hesitate to reach out if we can be of service. So my name is Anissa Avon, and I am the CEO of TurnKey Coaching and Development Solutions. Founded TurnKey in 2004. Can't believe it's been 16 years already. The goal was to become a single source learning and development solutions provider for enterprise clients. And what we've learned is that our coaches and trainers and organizational development experts serve as partners to our clients. We have master trainers and certified coaches in every major metropolitan area in the US and in key hubs globally. So what I'm very proud of right now is our Leading in a Crisis Summit, when we realized the end of March that all of our worlds was about to be turned upside down, that we needed to focus on how can we serve, because life as we know it is about to change. And I reached out to folks like Amy and other experts, and I said, this is what I'm thinking. What do you think? Can we pull this off? And sure enough, we've now have 50 plus experts. The number on your screen says 40, but it's actually 50 plus now and growing. So do check back often. We're going to keep this going on every Wednesday and Thursday in May and now into June. Maybe not every Thursday and Wednesday, but we're going to keep going because we've had lots of requests for some additional topics. So to introduce you to our expert today, Amy is a national speaker. She's a consultant and a facilitator. She leverages more than 20 years of professional leadership experience, including serving as the operations administrator for urgent care and retail care. And before that, she served as the director of clinical operations rehabilitation services. clinical operations in rehabilitation services. I think I got that right. Did I get that right? Okay, okay. And in her early career, even before that, she was a physical therapist. And then I don't know if she knows I'm going to say this or not. She even had a short stint as being a scuba diving instructor. That is pretty cool. I just learned how to scuba dive last summer. So, I think you're going to learn that her expertise comes out of a certain passion for helping others. And as such, she's also the consummate learner. She got her first master's degree in physical therapy from Ithaca College, and her second master's degree in business administration. So master's business administration with a focus on organizational development from Loyola University in Maryland. So very excited about having you here, Amy. Share with us a little bit about you. What did I miss, and what are we going to learn?
I have to say, I absolutely love that you brought out the scuba diver and the scuba instruction. That's not something that people always do find out about me, but it is definitely one of my passions. I just love being under the water. And actually, my family used to tease me. I'm raised by school teachers, and 3/4 of my extended family is school teachers. And it's so funny because I was like, I am not a teacher. And I'd been able to say I wasn't a teacher until the day I became a scuba diving instructor. And my mom was like, now, is instruction the same as teaching? And, so there's no way around it. It's in my blood. I just choose to do different teaching than maybe, home ec or social studies. Exactly. But that was a great, great time in my life. And I certainly learned a lot of valuable lessons. And what I want to share with you today are some of the other valuable lessons I've learned over my time. And I want to share with you my belief in a people-first strategy. And we're going to talk really about some hard lessons I learned, particularly around emotional intelligence and how that's one of the core competencies of a people-first strategy. And I think the other thing is that I want to remind people that we've been through challenging times before. It doesn't matter how long you've been in the industry you're in, there's been a challenging time in your life, and it's really about how we view the possibility and the potential that's coming out of it. So the lessons we learn here can be useful, not just today when the stakes are incredibly high, but every day going forward. And I'm going to walk through why that's so important.
Great.
All right, well, thank you guys. Let's go ahead and get started. I already shared that, there is no mistake that the stakes are high right now, but I want you to realize it's not just about this intense time that we're going through, these challenging and especially now uncertain. We don't have all of the answers, but I want you to know that if you execute a people-first strategy, you will maintain and actually build trust. You will minimize errors happening now and in the future. And you're actually going to stimulate inspiration. I've worked with some of my clients and we're hearing incredible stories of breakthroughs in ideas, innovations and changes that they're making. And it's because of that people-first strategy during this uncertain time. And the thing is, what you do today is going to carry through to the future. Where I live in Pennsylvania, back in March 13th was shutdown day. And a friend of mine is a dental hygienist. She got a text from her dentist and it said, well, apparently we are not essential, so you're all fired, go get unemployment. Group text. Last she heard from him until this week when he said, well, I guess we're back open, so I'll see you on Monday. Do you think she's going back?
Wow.
Yeah. She's not going back. The reality is she split her time with another dental office and she has the opportunity to go back to that dental office full time. So what her business owner chose to do not only affected in the moment, but long term. And I'm not saying you neglect the business necessities. You absolutely have to close when your state governor says doing dental work is illegal. You can't do it. Absolutely. That business necessity doesn't change. But when you use the three core rocks of this people first paradigm, which I'm going to show you in a minute. You move from business necessity, whatever the fallout may be, to this actual team building, this camaraderie. You know, if you get a personal phone call from your leader who says, these are rough times, here's the situation we're in, let's talk through options. You know, I had one client and he said, Amy, he said, I'm not really sure what to do. This was back in March. He goes, I don't really want to lay people off. And yet, and I said, and yet right now furloughing is a better option. He goes, yeah. He goes, in fact, a couple of my employees said, you know, here's the help if we can get furloughed. So what he ended up doing was moving his entire team to 5 hours a week so that they could get partial unemployment and keep their benefits. They met the business necessity, but with a people first paradigm. And that's what we're going to talk about here. And, you know, I speak from personal experience. So Anissa, you shared that I was a director of rehab, and I've been fortunate to serve in that position over a variety of settings over many, many years. And several years ago, I would not say I had the level of emotional intelligence that I have today. And so I'm going to tell you a tale of two storms. In the first storm, we had inordinate flooding, very atypical for our area. And I had therapists in acute care, a trauma hospital, acute care therapists calling saying, I don't think I'm going to come in today. I'm going to watch my basement. My trigger was, well, we're not essential employees. Well, you know, PT is really not essential in acute care. Now, my first answer involved hand gestures. And my second answer was, well, if you're not essential today, you're not essential tomorrow. So feel free to not come in and enjoy watching your basement. I hope it's better than the last episode of Survivor. I really just blew it in every way possible. Now, granted, I may not have said any of that or done any of that out loud, but boy, they knew it, right? Yeah. And so the difference is that I lost them. Sure, they all came back to work, but their hearts didn't come back. Their heads didn't come back. They just physically came back to work. And as we tried to roll out new initiatives or make changes or make progress, they were making the hand gestures and they were saying, yeah, you think this is what we're going to do? It was terrible. I lost my team and I ended up losing that position.
Wow. Mm-hmm.
Whereas a couple years later, another storm, this time a snowstorm, in central PA, 4 feet is like a really big deal. So 4 feet in a very short amount of time. I was director of urgent care operations. And this time what happened was I called every single member of the team. What do you need? Do you have everything at your house that's okay? Have you been plowed out? Is your car have more than a 4-inch clearance? You know, I mean, all of those types of things. And the interesting thing was we kept at least one clinic open every day for our patients. And when the team came back, they were so galvanized around this experience we'd all had collectively that it became a rallying cry for us. If we can keep the clinic open when there's 4 feet of snow, we can do anything. And it was amazing, but it's because I had that people first paradigm shift. And that's what we're going to really explore.
Excellent. Really good stories.
I like to anchor them with stories. And so this is the people first paradigm, and it's a cairn. And if you know cairns, they're what you use to guide your way along the path as you're hiking. And cairns are made by stacking rocks on top of each other. And the way to build a cairn that's going to last is to make sure that you pick rocks that are going to really anchor and secure and provide foundation for the next level. So when I think about the people first paradigm, the foundational rock that we can't do anything else without is the way we think. It's our mindset. It's our intention. And so the first key to the people first paradigm is really this idea of what we think, what our intention is. So back to that dentist, the intention through his text was purely, I'm angry, my business is gonna lose money, and that's all that matters. His intention with a text was not to demonstrate caring or commitment. And so what our intention is roots everything else that's above it, which is the things that we do, our behaviors, and the things that we say or leave unsaid. And so the three rocks that make up this people first paradigm are what you think, do, and say. Now you'll notice the say rock is smaller, but boy, if it wasn't there, the do rock wouldn't be doing its part either. And the reason it may be smaller is because so much of our interpretation of things is not out of the words themselves.
Yeah.
So behaviors, our body language, when I look at behavior from an organizational standpoint, this is organizational design. You know, the client, Kevin, who said, I'm going to furlough everybody except for 5 hours so that they can keep their benefits. That's an organizational design behavior that showed a people first paradigm.
Yeah.
Make sense so far?
Oh, completely. Completely.
Awesome.
I love the analogy here. I didn't know what a Karen was before. Did I say that correctly, Karen?
Yes, you did.
Okay. And the balance at the bottom, think mindset and intention, makes perfect sense. We had a speaker a couple of days ago that was talking about motive and how that mindset comes forth and either influences positively or negatively. And so it makes perfect sense that this people first strategy starts with what's your real intention? What's the motive?
Yeah.
What's
yeah.
the mindset?
And that came to me because I have a personal motto, and it's a fun story, but I can't go into it now. It involves the Grand Canyon and like torrential rainstorms. It's, I stayed at the Bates Motel. So that's how I came to my motto. But it really helped me remember. And the first thing I had to change when it came to dealing with a storm was my mindset and my intention, which allowed me to then change what I say and what I do to demonstrate my people first mindset.
Excellent.
And so this is the core foundation of all of the leadership programs that I teach. It is truly, what do you think, do, and say in a people first paradigm. And so my whole program is set up based on this. And then you'll see that final rock. When you're hiking, some cairns are small, some are really tall. And of course, the taller it is, the easier it is to see from far away. And I think that it's important we always remember growth. And that growth is the small rock on top that just makes it an inch taller compared to those around it, which allows it to be a better beacon for where they're headed. And so that's really the idea of that piece. I'm just going to show this really briefly because I want to get into the heart of the session. But I want you to know that the paradigm is not just words or a process. It can be turned into action. So think about how you can change your paradigm, not only your thinking, but what you say and what you do around the life cycle of an employee. Even if I just change the words, instead of retaining employees, I want to engage and empower. Instead of onboarding or orient them, I want to align them to the new work and inspire them to the organization's purpose. And instead of recruiting, wouldn't it be nice if I could attract? And so I know you've talked about some of the giveaways and things that you're doing through this program. And for anyone that wants it, I have a freebie, which is a 16-page ebook, white paper, on the paradigm of people first in action through the employee life cycle. So I wanted to include that so people have something they can really take away.
Beautiful.
What we're going to do next is we're going to shift gears and actually focus in one of the core competencies of a people first paradigm. And that's your level of emotional intelligence. And there's so much depth and information here for EQ. What I'm going to do is just walk us through a higher level understanding of EQ so that members and listeners can have two things take away from this. Number one, is there an area that I've realized I have an opportunity in because of this uncertain time? And number two, how do I help my team and the organization overall improve its emotional intelligence? So those are the two goals that we're going to look at. Before we do that though, and I'm not going to go deep into the science, but you got to do a little bit of the neuroscience with this. And as a PT background, I try to keep it high level. But when we look at this, when we are experiencing fear, anger, frustration, or in some cases just sheer excitement, our brain takes the shortest route to action, which is through our amygdala. And our amygdala is our flight or fight response. And so what happens is when we get triggered and have an intense emotion, our amygdala responds quickly, and it actually disables our higher cortex, which basically translates to this idea that instead of being able to rationally think through a cognitively intelligent response, my base instincts of fight or flight kick in. And so by understanding the circuitry of our brain, I now can actually figure out how to outsmart it, which is really what we want to do through emotional intelligence. And through the assessment tools that I use with clients, there are 5 components of EQ, and that 5th one is motivation, and it normally sits in that middle box. The thing to note here, I'm only going to focus on the outside boxes because what I want to talk about are the 4 key components through the whole process. And so when we think of EQ, we think of ourselves and others, and we look at 2 different aspects, and that's awareness and action or regulation. And we're going to talk about some of those different pieces as we go through. So self-awareness, this is that knowledge of what triggers you. So think back to my story about the flooding. I didn't realize that if someone said to me, I'm not an essential worker, that all the hair on the back of my neck went up and I felt that tension rise. I'm not essential was a trigger for me. I didn't have any awareness around that. So self-awareness is really, what am I experiencing? What's triggering me? Then you have to ask yourself the question, why is it, am I experiencing that? And in the case of an essential worker, for me, it came down to, I believed in the value and the need for physical therapy and the services I provided. And the idea that you could say to me, because it's raining, it's no longer important, didn't cut it for me. And so I had to understand why, not only what the trigger was, but why it was a trigger. And then I had to look around and say, what am I letting this trigger do to my responses? How is it impacting my ability to perform? That's that first level. Then we've got self-regulation. This is asking yourself, what action should I take? Should I do anything about it? Could I do anything about what I'm experiencing? And then what do I do to appropriately express what I'm experiencing? So regulation is the action we decide to take or not take. And with self-regulation, we have the ability to say, there's nothing I'm going to do about it. Every time someone says, not essential, I'm going to fly off the handle. We can make that choice. Self-regulation is the acknowledgement that we have a choice. And that's the first step to recognize, is that I don't have to be controlled by my emotional response. I have a choice in how I act. And that's what self-regulation is. Then we move into social awareness. And this gets a little bit more challenging because the truth is we can't tell whether or not someone has social awareness. We can't tell what someone else is experiencing. I can't easily look at someone and automatically know the truth about their emotions or what they're experiencing. I can guess, I can make an assumption, I can allow my personal biases to determine what's actually being felt and experienced by that other person, but I can't truly know. So I have to learn how to read people. And we're going to talk about that in a few minutes, but you need to learn how to read people and you need to learn how to read them accurately. So when I'm working with training programs and with clients and they say, how do I get better at social awareness? I say the first thing is you have to validate your assumption. When you're answering the question, what is this other person experiencing right now? The question you have to ask is, did I guess right? And then you start to learn how to read and interpret people. So I often am encouraging people to say, it seems to me that you might be feeling or experiencing this. Am I right? Or in an even better way, just say, what are you experiencing right now? What are you feeling right now? Let it be even more open-ended, and suddenly you'll get a real insight into it. And
We
then,
use a lot in my family. We use a
do
lot.
you?
Yeah, well, at least I do with my children. I've learned to say, my perception is that when I asked you to do the dishes, it upset you. Is that accurate? My perception is that you really rather just play that video game than help out with the family. Is that right?
I love that. I love it. And think about the situation we're in right now. I had a call with a COO this morning, and she and I were talking about some of the things that they've been going through. And they're a large organization that primarily serves in skilled nursing facilities and assisted living. So they're really getting hit hard by this. It's incredibly, one of their locations had one patient with COVID on a Friday, and by Monday there were 20. Oh. And they just, it's such a difficult time. And they had someone text and say, I have an advanced degree. I shouldn't be passing out dinner trays. That's one response. And someone else said, and they didn't start with that. They started with, I can't come to work anymore. So Carla started asking questions, help me understand. And they wouldn't answer. And then finally the text came, I have my doctorate. I don't need to be serving trays. Okay, then that's a different conversation.
That's right.
She had someone else call and say, I'm afraid to come to work. Okay, it maybe started the same way, but Carla, not using your very eloquent words about perception, but simply said to her, what's going on for you right now that's making you afraid? And she said, well, right now, my mother's living with us, and she's going through chemo. I'm afraid to come back to the house after work. Very different.
Very different conversation.
Exactly. And so, one of the best things that we can do to improve our social awareness is really get curious. We can learn to set aside our biases and our assumptions and just go in with curiosity. Because one of the things that I think can happen right now is we assume everybody's experiencing the same thing. I am not a Facebooker. I don't do that very often, but I have been really curious to see what people are going to write on Facebook about what we're experiencing. And there was this one, quote, picture, something that came through, and it said, even though we're all going through the same storm, we're not experiencing it the same way. And then there was a picture of a celebrity saying we're all in this together, and they're on their yacht. And then there's someone else in a dinghy saying we're all in this together. We're all experiencing it differently. So by getting curious, we can start to understand more about what's going on for people.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I wanted to offer to this group, and this is actually going to lead into the giveaway that 2 lucky winners are going to have. But I think one of the things that we can accidentally do right now is assume we know the cause of the stressors. We can make assumptions. I was doing work with a client who it was their first time working from home. And they're a really tight-knit group, and they work really, really well together. And they just said, Amy, can you help us out? And so we did a Zoom meeting. And I just started asking questions, and one of the women started crying. And she said, I'm so sorry, guys. I'm doing everything I can because I know you have kids and I don't. And I know I'm so much more fortunate that I don't have to figure out how to homeschool. So I'm doing twice my normal amount of work because I want you to know I'm trying as hard as I can. And they were like, stop doing that. And it's because She had a perception, an assumption. And so every time we make an assumption about the cause of the workplace stress, we're guessing.
Yes.
And, you know, with a healthcare background, you don't guess. You get an x-ray, you do a lab test, you get an MRI. You don't guess. You do a deep dive to figure out the root cause. And when we look at the causes of stress in the workplace, even in normal times, we get it wrong a lot of the time. But look at what the different categories are. So we've got demand. Is there an extraordinary demand in the work? For some organizations right now, yes, they're doing double shifts. They're having to place more orders. You know, when you see some of the distribution centers and how quickly they're having to work, or, you know, deliveries, all of those types of things, some essential workers, that demand level has really escalated. For others, it's the definition of effort versus reward. Some places are being asked to take pay cuts or cut back on their hours. They're starting to weigh what the effort is versus the reward. You know, again, most of my work comes out of healthcare, and I know what it means to be an essential worker. I worked in an ED. I know what that means to be on the front lines every day. Grocery store workers don't know what that is. And when they are working for $10 an hour and they know they're putting their families at risk, that effort reward balance is now different. Control. How much control does that person have over their work? Gosh, think about this one right now. You know, you went from an office with a door. One of my clients, God love her, she's in a closet with curtains because their office, I mean, her house is this quaint little row home that does not have room for an office. So she is in a closet. She's got like lights all over the place. And she just feels like things are out of control from what she can be in charge of. And control goes even deeper than that. You know, suddenly I'm not in charge of my schedule because I've got kids who I'm homeschooling and their schedule has to come first. Or suddenly my husband and I are sharing a computer and I don't have control over my work. Yeah, you know, you're like, I got that one. Yep. But absolutely. Organizational changes. My gosh, think about all of the changes we're going through. And the interesting thing with organizational changes is there are some we have control over and some we don't. But at least we need to know if that's the actual stressor. Then you've got my manager or my supervisor. BC, before COVID,
yep,
this was the biggest work stressor, the actual interactions with your manager or your supervisor. Interestingly, I don't have enough data to say what it is today, what the number one is today, but some people will say it's my manager or my supervisor, but it's actually the control or the organizational change. Social support is another huge one. I was connected to my team. I could walk by their desk and do a high five. If I had a question, I could quickly turn to someone and say, you know, how can you help me? One of my clients, and he's really a great guy, but he's been struggling. He's on a management team for an accounting firm that I work with. And he's a great guy, but he's been really struggling at home. And his boss called and said, can you do a three-way call with us and let's figure out what's going on for him? And she said, I'm pretty sure it's because he's such a high I influencer and he's really outgoing that I think he's having a lot of stress because he's working home by himself. What it turned out was when we talked to him, he goes, you know, he said, I'm really about the ROI. He said, I am so motivated by the return on my investment. And I got to tell you, working from home's killing me because I have to look more stuff up myself. So what do you mean by that? He said, well, when I'm working with a client's tax prep, if I don't know the answer to something, I normally would just go to get a cup of coffee and ask so-and-so on the way, and they'd know the answer. So it was so efficient and effective for me to be in the office because I never had to look anything up. And I think that's a waste of time.
Yeah.
So it was fantastic because Meredith had started by saying, I think if we can create more happy hours for you, or if you and I do a coffee break every week, maybe that'll help. So she's solving his extrovert issue when it turns out he missed his feeder method.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yep.
It was what motivated him to get his work done was the fact that he could get cheater answers, and now he was having to slow down. So social support for very different reasons.
Yeah.
Job security. We can all imagine right now what it's like. What is going to happen to my job? What are the possibilities? So this causes of workplace stress is so important as we tie it into this idea of social awareness. What is the other person experiencing right now? I don't know. What is my team experiencing right now? I wish I had a way to know that. And you do. Through TTI Success Insights, I'm able to provide a stress quotient assessment. And we can, each member of the team can take the assessment, and then what we do is we group the answers to create a summary report, and suddenly I know what root cause to attack first. The stress assessment and the stress quotient are truly just ways for me to be able to start a conversation and make sure I'm starting the right conversation. Because if my assumption is that it's about manager and supervisor index, because let's face it, it's always the supervisor's fault, and then I discover that it's actually a demand index, that's a very different answer. And so when I look at this, it's the same thing. For Rajul, we assumed it was because of social support because he's an outgoing guy. And it's actually because his primary motivator is utilitarian, and his primary motivator is return on investment and efficiency. Mm-hmm. And so once we knew the true root cause, suddenly I can actually address it.
Yeah.
So I wanted to share this summary because for everyone, this is actually the giveaway for 2 lucky registrants. Great. For their teams. I'm going to be offering them free stress assessments and a complimentary one-on-one executive debrief of the results.
How fun.
Yeah.
I mean, not that you want to have the stress, but if you have stress, which I think we do, the ability to have a conversation as a team with, hey, what is, we can make those assumptions, as you were saying, mm-hmm. But all too often the assumptions are not accurate, which is where that perception check or a stress assessment comes in. That's very cool.
Absolutely. And yes, we all have stress, and right now we have inordinate numbers of levels of stress. But it really comes down to being able to have that dialogue. And this is a way to start having that dialogue. And like I said, even back in my physical therapy days, if a patient came in with neck pain, I didn't assume it came from the neck. I had to also look at the jaw, the shoulder, before I could decide where it was actually coming from so that I could get to the root cause and treat the right thing. And that's what this is going to allow us to do. Very good. That's why I wanted to incorporate this as a component of social awareness.
That's great. And so everyone knows the way our system works is it's like a raffle. And the system will just send out 2 folks. We'll get the raffle winning ticket, and it'll let you know.
Yeah, and I'm excited. So please reach out once you get your raffle winning ticket, and we'll schedule some time to chat more about it in detail.
Perfect.
The last element is social regulation. This is that idea of what could I or should I do so that I can positively impact the situation. And, I think one of the pieces here is that sometimes we think we know what we should do and we make a mistake. So one of the things I like to remind people with social regulation is you might not do it perfectly the first time, keep trying. I've been working with clients, and, as we talk about stress and all of this change that we're going through, it's brought to mind something called the Kubler-Ross change curve. I don't know, Anissa, if you've heard of it. Yeah.
Sure, you bet.
Yeah. So what that is, Kubler-Ross created the stages of grief. And it's been adapted to look at change and the way that people move through change. And so you've got, the initial shock, which we've all experienced together. And then we had people move through the denial phase. I was just talking with a friend today, and, a week before shutdown, we actually had gone to a concert in DC. So we stayed at a hotel and we went to an indoor arena with a couple thousand other people to see a band. And she's like, I just wasn't ready to believe that anything was going to happen. And I said, I know, I was in complete denial. And so you move through that denial phase, and then we all hit frustration and we get angry that this is happening and we want to change it. Then we have a continued downslide towards the valley of despair, which is actually that depressive, that low energy place, that place where we have a low mood, we have lack of energy. And then we start to come out of that valley of despair by going into experimentation. This is where we start to say, what if we try this? Or what if we do that? This is where you get the thinking around what's going to be a better normal than what we have today. And then you get into, we've tried a couple things, let's make a decision and integrate it. And the reason I bring that up here is because with social regulation, people often think there's things they certainly should do at that time that it turns out aren't necessarily the right directions. I took a team of managers through that change curve, and we looked at leadership styles. And I said, okay, guys, we've gone over Goleman's leadership styles. You've got affiliative, you've got pace setting, commanding. Let's go through and which style is going to be best to help positively impact where someone is on the curve. And I have to say, most times less than 75% got the right answer. For frustration, someone said, oh, well, that's when you want to be a visionary leader. I'm like, really? Someone's very frustrated about their situation, and you're going to say, oh, but we can make it all better. And he's like, yeah, don't you think that would move me? And I said, could it make someone else more angry? And, oh, well, what should we do? And so you have to experiment a little bit. You have to figure out, what can I do? How can I positively impact the situation? And that's really what social regulation is. So it's a trial and error method. And I think one of the things that hopefully people are taking away from these uncertain times is to give each other a little bit more grace. And so now's the time to experiment a little bit. Try it. When you go back to the people first paradigm, think, do, say. Let people know your intention. My intention is for us to figure out a solution together. I might mess up how I introduce the idea, but that's my intention.
Yeah.
So now I've introduced language that shows and makes really clear what my intention is, that foundational rock of people first strategy, intention and mindset.
Yeah. You bring up something. We've got a few minutes. Oh, I'm so glad. I wanted to make sure that folks know how to get a hold of you. But something that you said earlier brings up a good point. So even as you just mentioned, even when we set forth a positive intention, and even when our heart is, we want to demonstrate compassion, but as a business owner, I'm going to pull something out. I also know I've got to make swift decisions.
Yeah.
I've got to stop the bleeding, so to speak, in some areas. And I may not pull it off. I may not speak enough words of compassion. I may not demonstrate the level of concern that I actually hold. What is an effective leader that's putting their people first do after the mess up, after I've totally dropped the ball on what I intended, how I intended to handle this? What do they do then?
That is a great question. And it's a two-pronged answer. So the first prong is, if you've been demonstrating a people-first paradigm all along and you make a mistake, people are going to forgive you right off the bat for it. You know, I think about large companies right now who've made an oops, or, you know, when certain brands have gone through those periods where they've had a data breach. Boy, you see a very big difference in response. If someone had a data breach and they own it right away, everybody's like, man, that's a great company. I'm so thankful they owned it. They're going to do things to protect me. Whereas that person, that company that had a data breach, and 2 years later, it leaks out that they had a data breach. So your best way of handling an oops is having pre-planned. You're gonna have an oops, but if you've been living all along in that people first paradigm, you will get your reprieve, you will get your forgiveness, you will get your grace.
Yep.
That said, if you're still learning, or your organization hasn't designed itself in a way to meet the people first strategy just yet, the best thing you can do is as quickly and as honestly apologize.
Yeah.
And that's the most important thing, is to be sincere in your apology. And I say sincere because even if you say, I'm very sorry, if your mindset or your intention are not truly apologetic, it won't matter. And that's why that mindset becomes so important. And so when you're looking at how do I handle this, be very honest, guys. This is what I was balancing. The fact that our triple P loan didn't come through yet, and the fact that we don't have any clients and customers to serve, this is where I'm at. Here's how I'm going to handle it right now. But I want you to know I still care about all of you guys, and I'm going to be in touch, and I'm going to keep you as up to date as I can.
Yep. Yep. That genuine, authentic vulnerability is difficult for most of us, let alone leaders that are in their own series of distress.
Absolutely. And sharing your distress. This has been a really hard decision for me. Can be very helpful.
Yeah.
But again, the underlying mindset that you have is so important, because, you know, I worked with a colleague who really wasn't a people first mindset, and they'd start all of their emails, "Dear team." And "Dear team" is great if it's true. That's not how they saw it. It was this pretend way that they thought, she thought she could fake us all into thinking that she had a team-oriented mindset. People can see through that. But I will also say that if you're struggling with how do I behave in a people-first way, and you're not really sure, find the word first and the behavior will follow. You have to have the mindset. But once you have the mindset, say that you're working on something and you can't figure out what's the right words in this situation. If you don't know, behave the way you would want your mindset to be carried out, and the words will follow. And so I think about some examples with this where I knew I wanted a people first mindset, but I couldn't make all of my actions happening the way I wanted them to. I was still making a lot of mistakes. And so what I started to do was I started to even just change the way I talked about my team. They were no longer my employees, oh my gosh, the dreaded FTEs or direct reports. I talked about people I supported. And every time I said the people I support, reinforced the mindset. So I would say, well, the people I support are experiencing this. The people I support need this tool. And it just kept reinforcing the mindset. And then my behaviors started to go along with that supportive language. So we can use those to help each other as we build on the rock of mindset.
So you're saying if the behavior isn't natural, or if the decisions, the way that we're managing the stress isn't demonstrating the type of leadership that we intend, find the words, begin saying it, and allow the behavior to be born out of that.
Exactly. You can say, my intention is, and just by saying that, you're starting down the right path. And sometimes you can say, my baby, your perception of me was incorrect because my behavior did this, but my intention was that. That's now back to the dialogue. That's the saying part of it. That's the speaking our truth. And absolutely, with the paradigm for the employee life cycle, when I stopped wanting to retain employees, retain is a terrible word. It actually means to, it's like to keep someone chained to you, to their chattel. And so when we say we want employee retention, that means I want them to be bound to me by money.
Yeah.
I want them to be tied to me. No, I don't want that. I want engagement. I want empowerment. That is that leads to very different behaviors than when we talk about retention.
Yeah. Yeah. So I have one more question. We're just about out of time. It's one thing, we have a lot of HR peers that we work with and that are listening in on our Leading in a Crisis Summit. And we have a lot of leaders. It's one thing for those of us who are attending webinars like this to put this into practice. It's also another thing when we have peers or managers who perhaps are not representing in a way where it demonstrates the values that we're wanting to demonstrate, or the integrity or the emotional agility or intelligence, et cetera. So, or the people first strategy, bar none. So what does someone do when it's really up to just them to put this forth, when perhaps their peers or other executives are not representing with a people first strategy?
I think that's a great thing for us to consider, because one of the things is, depending on, the way that HR is viewed in certain organizations, HR is oftentimes viewed as a strategic partner.
Right.
And yet there's other places where HR is still viewed as a service function area. And so if you're fortunate enough to be in that strategy aspect, that C-suite aspect, being very articulate and speaking up with your peers, that's why you're there. If you're in an area where it's perceived as truly a service function and you don't have a voice at the table, you can still be demonstrating that people first, even in your interactions with others, so that at least people know within the organization there is someone somewhere who they can go to for that people first paradigm. But as you elevate your HR team to that strategic partnership with the senior leaders of the organization, then that gives you the ability to actually bring them to your thinking. As much as the Dear team really didn't work for me, I've had other people who kept saying things. I actually used to do this because I make up a lot of words, it turns out. And I had used this one word so much in conversation that other people started to use it as if it was a real word. And I realized that if we just keep saying the same things, eventually people start miming us. They keep mimicking it, and suddenly people start to change their perspective on it. So you never know what's going to happen.
So very good. Very good. Well, so Amy, share with folks, why would they reach out to you? What kind of work do you do that might be supportive of an organization?
Absolutely. Thank you. So please reach out to me when it comes to team dynamics and some of that leadership development programs. So I provide, and even before this all happened, BC, before COVID, I was providing blended training programs that are a combination of in-person and virtual professional and leadership development programs. And they all revolve around the people first paradigm. So we work on mindset, we work on behaviors, and we work on language. I do that with professionals in terms of their personal development. And then we also work with organizations on their organizational design, their selection practices, their how they design their performance review process, or we get rid of that word, those types of things. So I do it from an advisory perspective of how do we change our organization into a people first paradigm. And so the stress quotient is part of that. We utilize a big variety of assessment tools to help get a baseline for folks, including those EQ assessments. And that's one of the exclusive offers, is a discount on my EQ package right now for everybody that's participating in the summit.
Oh, fantastic. Thank you. And what is the EQ package?
So that would be 20% off of EQ assessments for everyone on your team, plus a 2-hour debrief, virtual debrief with the team to talk about ways that they can improve their emotional intelligence and work together as a team. And then I work with the organizations to set up some accountability partnerships and continuing the path.
Fantastic. Excellent. Well, definitely reach out to Amy to learn more and watch your email. Someone is going to get that raffle ticket and those assessments that she mentioned. Also want to mention very briefly why reach out to TurnKey if in fact you have some learning and development needs and with your remote team or with the team that's coming back. We've put together some items around effectiveness in remote working, as well as managing through complexity and business continuity and crisis communication. And for every one of our programs, we've put together COVID-19 specials. This one happens to be buy one, get one. So 2 teams for the price of 1. And then, of course, unfortunately, we have many of our peers and clients who are in the middle of layoffs and indefinite furloughs, and are looking at outplacement in order to properly, compassionately lay off their employees. So our outplacement packages are facilitated by expert outplacement coaches and career consultants. And likewise, we have really affordable packages that are unique to this time in our mutual collective crisis. So it would be my privilege and honor to support you. And Amy, this was really informative. I love your energy. I love the stories. I think we could all relate. And so I just want to say really thank you for sharing with us.
Oh, thank you so much for the opportunity, and I appreciate it. And I look forward to hearing any questions that I can help people with and how I can serve. So
Beautiful.
thank you.
Thank you. Stay safe and healthy.
You too. Bye.
Stay safe and healthy, everyone. Bye-bye.